Hi everybody! Everyone's been in quarantine for a while now, so I thought it might be fun to talk about a few recent movies and shows that you can check out on streaming services right now that I recommend. I'm talking about late 2019 and into 2020 movies and TV shows that I haven't touched on before. It's just more recent stuff that's come out that everyone should watch. Let's get right on into it. First, I want to go through the movies, and the first one I want to recommend is the latest DCEU film, Birds of Prey. This is basically a Harley Quinn film. Margot Robbie reprises her role after the abysmal Suicide Squad. Margot Robbie was pretty much the best part of Suicide Squad, but she was written really badly and had a lot of really bad lines that were supposed to be funny, but just weren't. Now we have a film that doesn't even show Jared Leto's Joker at all, and hardly even acknowledges the existence of Suicide Squad at all, apart from a few small references. For me, what DC has been doing from 2019 onward is really interesting me, and I'm more excited for their future than I am for Marvel's, which is really weird considering where DC was just a few years ago. With Joker and Shazam being really good films last year, and now this, DC's been putting out good stuff, and I'm incredibly excited for Robert Pattinson's Batman, as well as James Gunn's Suicide Squad reboot. I don't think Birds of Prey is quite as good as Shazam, and it's definitely not as good as Joker, but it's a really fun movie with some good humor. The action is really well done because it feels more like John Wick rather than the typical DC or Marvel CGI fest that I've grown very tired of. They decided to go rated R with this one, and it works really well. Margot Robbie is fantastic in this film, as she's finally given a good script to work with, and Ewan McGregor really shines. He's been on a roll lately. Other members of the Birds of Prey crew aren't as memorable as they should be though, unfortunately, like Mary Elizabeth Winstead I guess was in the movie, but I barely remember her. But I liked how the movie could get really weird and out there at times, and it really pulls off pretty well. It's one of those movies where everyone is an asshole, and there's not really a good person in this movie, which is kind of fun, like Pirates of the Caribbean type deal. It's not high art, and it doesn't have some sort of filmmaking amazing message that's gonna change you, and there's no huge character arcs, but it's a fun, well-done comedy that can put a smile on your face during this time. Onward, the latest Pixar film. Pixar is my favorite studio of all time. In the 2010s, they were a little bit mixed. They went through a bit of a dry spell for most of the decade, where they would release something really amazing and then something subpar shortly after. I think with 2018 and beyond, they've gotten their footing, and I have a feeling we're not going to see a subpar film from Pixar for a while. Tom Holland plays a character that is strangely more like Peter Parker than his version of Peter Parker is. He plays a very awkward character that is afraid of everything, and throughout the film is tested to conquer his fears, which is really relatable. That's ultimately what the film is about, but obviously there's also the theme of a parent not being present in your life, passing away before you could have even had memories of them. The thing I've always loved about Pixar is that they portray harsh realities in their films of the real world. Disney often portrays the idea of happily ever after and everything being wonderful by the end of their films, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but I think it's refreshing for Pixar to make endings that are bittersweet. It's a great homage to fantasy, and it's also about being appreciative of what you have in your life and not constantly seeking things you don't have. The Invisible Man, a new horror movie, is freaking great. This movie blew me away. When I saw the previews for this movie, I quickly shrugged them off as a generic February horror movie, but then when I actually saw the movie, I was blown away by just how good it was. It's an excellent portrayal of what abuse victims go through and the way in which they're haunted by what was done to them. But what if even after your abuser supposedly died, they still were able to come after you? I struggled watching this movie at parts, as the Invisible Man constantly made Elizabeth Moss's character look as if she was crazy in front of everyone around her, ruining any chance she has of getting better. The movie took a lot of turns I didn't expect because I hardly looked at any of the marketing for the film. There's also a scene in this movie that very much resembles a scene in my own movie, Shoulder Angels, that I just released last week, but I swear I wrote that and we attempted filming it a while before we saw Invisible Man, so it was kind of a coincidence when I saw that scene in the theater. The Invisible Man understands that the basis of horror is always real human struggles and traumas. All the best horror is about that. It's not just jump scares and crap like that. The Shining works because it's about abuse and a family breaking down. Hereditary works because it's about grief and a family's inability to recover and function. The Lighthouse works because it's about human struggle for power and knowledge, and the lengths we go to achieve those things. The best horror is a harsh portrayal of the human psyche. The Mandalorian is the first Star Wars live-action series that everyone is talking about, and I watched it every time the episode aired. I would watch it on the first day as soon as I could. I surprisingly haven't said much about it on this channel, though. I love The Force Awakens, I like Rogue One, I adore The Last Jedi, I don't like Solo, and I hate The Rise of Skywalker. The Mandalorian goes in the love category. I love this show. The show encapsulates everything I wanted from Star Wars for a while. All new characters, a morally ambiguous protagonist, more exploration of bounty hunters and the criminal underworld. The Mandalorian character himself is wonderful, and it's insane how he puts on a whole performance without ever taking off his mask. You always know what this guy is feeling based on his voice and his body movements, which is extremely impressive. I was wondering how they'd make a main character effective without showing his face, but they did it. Carl Weathers also shines, great to see him in something. Werner Herzog being in this movie is really jarring, but actually really works, and it's hilarious that he barely knew what Star Wars was before he was cast for this. Taika Waititi as the IG-11 droid is a lot of fun, and it's really cool that he got to direct an episode. But of course I have to mention Baby Yoda, who is a lot of people's favorite part of the whole show. I like him a lot. He reminds me of the baby Metroid that Samus takes care of in the Metroid games. My least favorite episode is everyone's least favorite episode, the Tatooine one, directed and written by Dave Filoni. You can tell this is one of the episodes where Jon Favreau stepped away and let somebody else take over. It's not a bad episode, it's just very average. I don't mind them exploring Tatooine because that's the original wretched hive of scum and villainy from Star Wars. It's just the acting of some of the characters and the overall story didn't really work for me. It was fantastic to see Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad fame in the last few episodes, and I cannot wait to see more of him in Season 2. The first season jumps around to a bunch of different planets and characters, and doesn't have a focused plot, which works here, but I'd like to see Season 2 change it up and have more of a focused plot. Awesome first season, can't wait to see where the second season goes, as well as what Lucasfilm does with Star Wars in the future. Let Rian Johnson make his trilogy, do the Star Wars underworld thing that George Lucas started, just do things with new characters, and I have faith in Lucasfilm that they can keep making good stuff. Afterlife is a show on Netflix that not enough people are talking about. It was directed, written, and starring Ricky Gervais. If you don't know who Ricky Gervais is, he created The Office, the show that we all know and love. He directed, wrote, and starred in the original British series, which is also great, and he helped start up the American version. So that's kind of a big deal, and he's a stand-up comedian, and he's done all kinds of shows. It's insane how this guy can write, direct, and star in an entire show of every single episode, and still make it really good. This show blew me away. It's a show about a man who's suicidal after his wife dies of cancer, and how he deals with life. It's extremely insightful on depression and grief, and it's one of the most relatable things I've ever seen. Ricky's character, Tony, is so upset with the world that he takes it out on everyone around him, and he has to learn to turn himself around and grow rather than continue to be an ass, which is really relatable to me because I went through a phase of time that was way too long where I acted just like this character in this show. Ricky is honestly my favorite comedian. He can do stand-up and he can direct, act, and write all at the same time and make a fantastic show. Ricky tackles a lot of topics that I've tried to tackle in my own films, and he does it excellently, and makes me afraid that I'll never be able to tackle these topics as well as he does. But it's stuff that I'm really passionate about and would like to continue to explore. It's just Ricky Gervais puts the pedestal so high. This show is like therapy for people who struggle with depression or grief, and I was really affected by it. There are many moments in this show where I was tearing up. And because it's Ricky Gervais, there's a lot of really good humor. The supporting cast is also really good, like the mom from Shaun of the Dead and Filch from Harry Potter. There's also a therapist in this show that is the absolute worst therapist you could possibly imagine. I wanted to punch this guy in the face every single time he was on screen. Season 2 is also really good, but sometimes it feels a bit repetitive to what we saw in Season 1, and I don't think it's quite as good as the first season, but it's still wonderful, and the last few episodes of Season 2 are heartbreaking. Ricky Gervais is so good in this show. He made me nearly cry. Also, if you're a religious person that thinks all atheists are terrible, murderous people who hate everything, this show counters that brilliantly, no matter what faith you practice. I'm so excited to see what Ricky Gervais does with Season 3 if he decides to make it. Please watch this show. It tackles a lot of important issues that I am passionate about, and it really should be getting more recognition than it does. Servant is a show on Apple TV Plus that wasn't created by M. Night Shyamalan, despite what the marketing wants you to believe. No, this was actually created by a guy named Tony Bass Gallop. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Shyamalan directed 2 episodes and is an executive producer, and he has a blink and you'll miss it cameo, and that's about as far as his involvement goes. The marketing very much tried to make this out to be Shyamalan's brainchild, but it's not. It's basically a show about a mentally unstable mother trying to cope with the death of her infant son, and she uses a type of therapy that apparently exists in real life of a baby doll to take care of as a coping mechanism. Toby Kebbell plays her husband, who is very weirded out by this whole thing, and Rupert Grint Ron Weasley plays her alcoholic brother. A girl named Nell Tiger Free plays a nanny that ends up being hired to take care of the baby doll, and she starts doing weird stuff around the house, like pretending the doll is a real baby. This show was absolutely riveting from episode 1 to the end of the season. All characters are fantastic and complex in their own ways, as they're all dealing with trauma from this situation in different ways. Rupert Grint was actually a really big standout, who was kind of a meme for never doing any acting aside from Ron Weasley, but he's finally found a good niche in this show, playing a sarcastic, alcohol-loving, snarky guy. And he made me laugh a lot in this show. He was kind of the audience character in a way. Almost all the show takes place in one house, which is really impressive, being able to tell a 10-episode series in a confined location. It's a show with so many questions that don't get answered for a long time. The finale answers some of the questions, but there's still a lot of hanging threads, and the finale didn't feel much like a finale because so much of it is a cliffhanger for season 2, which I love. The finale felt like it could have been in the middle of a season, which could be construed as a bad thing, but I didn't think it was. Even though Shyamalan only directed 2 episodes, you can see his stamp on them. There's a lot of close-ups with people looking directly in the camera and long takes. It also, of course, takes place in Philadelphia, which Shyamalan almost always uses as his location for all of his films. It was interesting seeing Shyamalan work on something that he didn't even write, and I'm excited to see what films he gives us in the future, because I was one of the people that actually really liked Glass, the latest movie he did in the Unbreakable trilogy. I actually really liked that movie. There's a lot of really good stuff. There's problems, but I liked it a lot more than most people did. I still have so much respect for M. Night Shyamalan, and I just cannot wait to see what he does next. I think this guy is a treasure, and I love him. I guess that's it. I didn't really have anything else to say. It's kind of anticlimactic, but that's pretty much all I had to say. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, check out my film, Shoulder Angels, which is on this channel. Share that around and watch it and comment on that. And yeah, hooray!